Welcome to Fear with Christine Spratley. Living like a head in charge, the podcast where Christine says fear, questions everything, and takes bold action. Christine Spratley is a former professional boxer, nanny, and 29-plus year corporate warrior turned founder of HBIC Advisors, where she is a public speaker and coach. She's been saying fear her whole life, many times without even realizing it. So tune in, spread the word, and get ready, because this isn't about aging with grace. It's about aging with mischief, audacity, and having a damn good story to tell.
Tubs, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody in between. We are back with Fuck Fear with Christine Spratley, living like a head bitch in charge. And this is a kind of a continuation of, we've been talking about the four aspects and the aspect in a woman's, the four corners, I call them, of the woman's life: our personal, our professional, our spiritual, and our physical. And the last episode we had on Ria Peake, and she has joined us again today because we've been talking about the physical and our bodies and the biology of our bodies and how that affects us as women. And if you didn't get to listen to it, please listen to the 5 things that she wished she would have known, and before she needed to know them. And I think that that's a key thing. So I want to kind of introduce you. If you haven't read or listened to that podcast, I want to introduce you to Ria. She's across the pond. So she's got this amazing, wonderful accent, and she's a wonderful person. It matches. And I'm not just blowing smoke, because you know by now I don't do that. She's backed up with some degrees: bachelor's in biomedical science, a master's in biotechnology, and a post-grad diploma in physical associate, which is studies, which is like a PA in the US. I think that's what it converts to. And she is currently doing, because that wasn't enough, she's currently doing her PhD work in psychology. So, which I think is really neat. What a crappy word. I think it's really fucking cool. That's a much better way to say it. That she is taking the biology and mixing it with psychology and bringing those two together in thought and practice. Because as women, what I've experienced for me is I've focused a lot on the biology I focused a lot on the psychology, but didn't know a lot about the biology. And as we've spoken before, if you listen to my health podcast or my physical podcast, you've heard me talk about what that was like. I was like, what the hell? I mean, this is how my brain works with hormones. This is the biology of my body. And Ria, we talked a little bit about this morning before we got on the air, about how we're so unconscious to it. And I mean, it just happens. And that's also how powerful our bodies are, women. Like, they don't check in with us. They just do. They just do. And they organize, they protect, they guide, and they influence. And I think that is also something really wonderful. So today we get to talk about sex, baby. Talk about you and me.
And let's talk about all the good things and the bad things.
Yes.
Mostly the bad things, right?
Yes, but we get to talk about the really good things, because what's fun about this segment for me is a lot of reasons. But the whole thing that I want to start with, and we're going to start with this, and then we're going to go into sex and specifically masturbation. Joe's like, what? I didn't read the script. But it is, and then just orgasms and things like that. But we're going to talk about listening to our bodies, because our bodies are going to tell us fulfillment. And I'm not just talking about in the bedroom fulfillment. I'm talking about, for me, I didn't, know how to listen to my bodies. And we were talking about this earlier, how it's almost like it's a completely different language that I didn't even know was being spoken. So I didn't know to listen. I knew, we're supposed to meditate. We're supposed to, do our nightly, meditation of check in the body. But really, what is it speaking? And it's speaking a lot all the time. And for it to speak to us, it has to take information in. And so it's taking information in all the time, not just in the bedroom. And it's telling us and informing us with that information and data. And I think that is what's really amazing about our bodies. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, about some information that I look back now and go, wow, this is what it was telling me. And I had no idea. And we're going to talk also, I didn't know there's a difference. And I didn't know this at all. I'm 54, didn't know this. Difference between having sex with your partner and masturbating, and understanding that, and Ray, you're going to get technical on this, but just make sure I'm honest here. It's the different parts of the brain, and it's different. It's different, the different types of pleasure and the different reasons why one may be generated and the other not, orgasms and things like that. And it does different. It has different goals, maybe. Is that the way to put it? What word am I looking for here? It comes from a different place in your brain that takes over and says, okay, this is what we're going to do here. As far as, like we talked earlier about assessing.
Kind of. It might be more, it has different functions.
Yes.
Like one is much more social, one's much more about regulation.
That's perfect. Perfect. See, I like you, Brits. So a little bit about where I'm coming from this. So as you know, that I started my HRT, and I have been single, left my husband since November of 2024. So not very long, but, and I'm not out having sex. I got to say that for the record. But I have started to have something happen with masturbation, which I've had. I used to do it when I was younger, before I got married, and I did a little bit then, but had a partner, so didn't do a whole lot of it. Interacted with my partner and all that stuff with it, but just not really there from a full-on standpoint. And something that I had never had happen. So this is, ladies, if you haven't had an orgasm and you haven't had this happen before in your life, you can be 54 and have, for the first time, rolling orgasms. Never, ever. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I've had orgasms. I've had some leg thumping, get the neighbors up orgasms and whatever. But it went on for like 20, 25 minutes. And it was just continual. Go ahead, Ria.
I need the graphics here. So what's the difference? What's the difference between orgasms, like multiple orgasms separately, and rolling orgasms?
Well,
is there,
Well, the way that I've understood it, and because this is what's funny, is I was like, what the hell is happening?
At my desk.
I was like, and after I got done, people know me. They're like, I went and I looked up, I got on chat, and then I started going, where do I find out about this stuff? Because I didn't know what was happening, why it was so different, which then led me to questions of other sorts that we've talked about. And the rolling type of so women, and I'm going to make sure I'm going to look at my notes here so I make sure I get this right. But men can have orgasms. They tend to have one, and then they have to wait. Women, on the other hand, can have various orgasms, multiple back to back, and they're called rolling. So I'm going to find this real quick, and I'm going to tell you the different types of orgasms that women can have that I didn't know. Now, I knew we could have multiple, but I didn't know that they could just kind of flow into each other. And I think for me, that was what was so different than before, which was, it was done, okay, and I couldn't, this time it was go, 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 fuck, breathe. And it was funny because I was like, when I first heard it happen, I was like, okay, I don't want to let this go, because you know how, I don't know if it happened with you, but like you gotta, it's almost like you gotta concentrate when I was with my partners or whatever, that you have to concentrate so you stay focused so it happens. Where guys, it's like it happens. I mean, they know it's going to happen, and it happens, and it goes. Where for me, in my orgasm, it was always, there were very few times where it was like, okay, we're on the boat, and it's going to go. This was, we're on the boat, it's going, and it's going intense, and I'm just going, what the fuck, and it's not stopping. And so that was different. It was much longer. It was much longer intensity. And then what happened was it just kept going. And I would kind of come down a little bit, but I wouldn't come out of it. Like, so, and we're going to get a little graphic here. So I have this thing, and it's not a sex toy. It is now in my house. It's called Fitty. Because I love 50 Cent. So that's my sex toy. It's called Fitty, but it's not a sex toy. It is actually a ball that I got because I had arthritis in my hand. And it vibrates, and it's got all these levels, but it's very intense. And it goes, and so I was like, I was listening to, I think it was Nate Cole. I think that's the comedian's name. He's a Black comedian, and he's funny as hell. And he was talking about Lucky Dog. And that's a sex toy. And Ria, you told me about your stuff, so we'll have to get into that. But so I got Lucky Dog. I'm like, all right, we're gonna try this out. And it was nothing. Like it was good, but it was good, but it wasn't good. And so I'm laying there. I'm like, man, I really wanna get off. And so I'm like, this thing's right next to my bed, because it's my first thing, and I grab in the mornings on my hand so I can use it. And so I'm like, I'll put it between my legs, and it's big, and it's if you can see my hand, it fits in my hand. It folds that thing up. So it's not small. And the whole thing vibrates. And so it's not just your clit, it's everything. And you're going to think this is silly, but I have these silky pajamas. And they're Dillard's pajamas, so they're not like woohoo pajamas. They're like, and they got little hearts on them. They're goofy, but they're really. I got them because they breathe. They breathe and everything, so it's real soft and it's smooth. And so I leave my jammies on, and I put it on, and sure enough, everything around it vibrates. Everything, the lips, the legs, everything, including the clit, which I had never had happen before. So again, it's going, and I'm like, and so it starts going, and I'm like, oh, we're going, and I roll over on it. Again, I don't know that we're supposed to be doing this, but I'm doing it. We're rolling over on it, and I'm controlling where it's going without my hands, because I'm on top of it and I'm moving it. But it's so big that I don't have to worry about one little spot. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. Like, and I have a
Go
question.
ahead. Yeah.
Where can we get one? Like, can you put a link in the notes or something?
I will put this when this goes out. We will have a link. And I will call them and tell them that I want some.
You should get shares.
Yeah,
permission. Yeah.
But it's really kind of different, because I've never seen anything like that, where it's just the whole thing, which is amazing. So back to the whole orgasm, it was very much this. It happens and it goes, and instead of a crescendo, it just stays there. And instead of going, okay, we're done, where you usually, it doesn't, because used to be, I would get so sensitive that I was like, okay, get away, it's just, it doesn't do that. It just kind of lowers, and then it goes, and it stays there, and it goes, and so it was like about 3 or 4 times, seriously. And I was just, so it's like there's different waves of intensity that happen with it. And I had just never happened. I was like, what the hell? And so I didn't know that was that could happen, but it can. And so I'm I'm pulling up this and okay. Tell me a little bit about the because we talked about this. So what this did for me was I immediately got on chat. I was like, what the hell happened? What is this? And why am I feeling this way? And is this just because of my hormone replacement therapy? And what I realized was, and why wasn't I able to do this before? We talked about women tend to go, what's wrong with me? Why couldn't I do this with my partner? Why couldn't I do this in another setting? What's wrong with me? And then I started to learn, as we talked in the previous podcast, about there is this psychological side, but then the biology side of what happens. Because I thought, well, I couldn't achieve this before because it was because of my abuse. And I was like, man, but I've worked through so much shit. And it was because I, all of this other stuff. And what I realized, and I want you to talk about, is kind of how our body, from a biological standpoint, intakes information long before we get in the bedroom about our partner. And why that prevents us from sometimes even getting one.
Yeah.
Let alone getting
or even
in the mood.
getting in the mood. Exactly.
Mhm.
I think, there's so much here, isn't there? I think, we've all heard the phrase like sex starts way before the bedroom.
Mhm.
Like it starts way, way, way before. And we're talking about like nonverbal cues, body language. What it comes down to fundamentally is the nervous system. Like those, say you ask somebody to do something and, you have an agreement and, in everyday life and it doesn't happen. Or you get like a miscommunication or you get like a microaggression. Your body is absorbing so much information that the conscious mind isn't even aware of. So it's like, are you attuned? Is there attunement together? Is there safety in this relationship so that I can let my guard down? Because in partnered sex, it comes down to, well, there's a lot of it, but a big part of it is the amygdala in the brain. And that's the center that mediates fear and anxiety. And during orgasm, that switches off, right? Or it lowers itself. But if your amygdala is going and it's like, oh no, there's something in here where I'm not completely comfortable, it's going to be much, much harder to get to that state where it can, because the body's saying, I'm not safe. It's like in a kind of way, and not for everyone, but like, doing it in a public place. It's a little bit harder to get there because you're on alert, right? Your body's on alert. You're listening, or like, oh, what if my parents come home when you're younger, right? It's like that. It's a threat, and it's not anything that you can perceive in the conscious, but the unconscious part of the body, it knows it's there. It knows it's there.
And I think a big thing that's different, and Joe, I'm going to bring you into this, but that's different is that it's not, when we say safety, it's not necessarily just physical safety,
No,
which is a big part. And Joe, I think a lot of times, and I'd love your perspective, and because there's this, Joe's, I don't know, I'm just going to bring you in.
Okay.
So when you hear us talk about safety, I think a lot of times men think, well, physical safety, you're safe with me. Like you're safe with me. But I'm curious, when you hear that, is it emotional safety? Because it's physical safety, what does that mean to you? And I know you're one guy, but
I think for me, I probably think more about emotional safety because, I'm a middle-aged white dude in a suburban neighborhood. Like physical safety isn't really a chief.
But when you're talking, when a woman says to you, when you hear us talk about safety for a woman in bed, is it going to be, do men think, do most men think physical safety, or do they think emotional? Is she emotionally safe?
I don't know. I bet I can't speak for most men. I would imagine it's probably not as common that men would first think of emotional safety versus physical safety. Probably.
And I think because I don't even think of it like that. Like, and what I'm drawing here is, if you can follow me and Ria help me connect this, is that emotional safety is so high and so part of our biology that we've talked about, that it is, or safety, but part of it is emotional, is that you haven't, when you're disregarded and you haven't, for the 800th time, taken the dishes out, or you've been like, blow me off, or you're not pulling your weight, and you don't want to have to do anything with the kids, or you don't want to show up emotionally, be emotionally available. All of those things are cues that
Yes,
we don't take in, right? And we don't always
exactly.
take them in. We don't take them in, consciously, but our body's going, ooh, wow, ooh, wow.
That's the thing. It's like the conscious mind, you could go, oh, I'll brush that off. I can let that go. And you might have up here, but you haven't in here. And I think, just to add to what you guys were saying, what we're asking during intimacy is, can I be vulnerable with you? It isn't even, is this safe? But
Mm-hmm.
can I open? And they're ever so slightly, in my experience, just a little bit different. It's like when you hear, like if you hear a guy say, "Oh, I'll never hurt you," and you're kind of going, "Well, do you know what that means? Do you know
Mm-hmm.
what it means? And is there any difference between being safe in the physical and being safe in the emotional,
Yeah.
barring acute trauma?" Because as we've taught, they're the same. They are intertwined. So
Mm-hmm.
just because you think someone's not going to hit you in the face, the stress response in the body, if you're feeling emotionally vulnerable or mentally vulnerable, because that's a whole other element here. Are you mentally attuned and safe? The body doesn't actually know the difference, barring the acute trauma and the physical,
And the
onslaught.
body, this is the other thing, is the body is making that decision based on
Without you even knowing.
data,
Hmm.
data that they've taken in long before we get in the bedroom.
Great leadership doesn't start with a title. It starts with bold action. Christine Spratley works with high-performing teams that include anything from boards, councils, and project teams to cut through the noise, craft clear strategies, and most importantly, implement them. No fluff, no endless planning cycles, just real, fearless execution. With humor, practical insights, and a fearless approach, after working with Christine, leaders will step up, take action, and make shit happen. Book her now at christinespratley.com.
It's interesting. You should see my Instagram feeds that I get now. It's a lot of different things. Like, there's kids playing and doing stuff like cussing little kids and doing that stuff, and people getting scared, and animals, but then there's like men talking about what it's being a good man towards a woman, and what that's like, and how to show up, and real, like, I have these in my feeds now, and it's really great. But one guy was talking, he was doing his thing, and he was saying, hey, it starts, if you want to have sex with your wife, it starts way before the bedroom, and you need to get up and you need to make her coffee, and you need to ask her how her day is, and you need to and what's funny was, I was sitting there going, no, that's just what you should be doing.
Not for a goal outcome, right? Just for showing up in love.
Showing up and asking. But what I thought was, because you said something earlier that really resonated with me, and it's like, that part of our brain, the amygdala, shuts down. So if we think about this and how big that is, it means that it quits worrying. It says, we're good. We can go to that place. We can hit that high. And I don't sing, but you know what I mean. You can sing. You could hit that note and just really let go. And that is pretty powerful. So, like, when I hear guys go, I can make you come, or, we hear that shit all the fucking time.
Yeah.
It's not about that. I mean, if you can get someone to a place, and I think it's, again, we're still exploring this. This is not a baked cake by any means, but it's says so much more about out here what's going on in your relationship, which tells me, and we talked about this, going back to fulfillment. How fulfilled are we in our lives? How
Mhm.
hurt are we in our lives? How safe are we in our lives? How intimate and vulnerable can we be in our lives?
Mhm.
Because if I'm not at work, if I come home and I'm not sharing I can't tell you about my good, I can't tell you about my bad. You only want to hear this, or you only want to do this, or you want to check out and play video games or do whatever. How much of that shows me you're open to my vulnerability? And my body that whole time, I'm sitting here going, yeah, he's had a rough day. Well, that rough day's turned into a rough month, and that turned into a rough year. And is this, and then we just start but all of that, our body stores, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of, it's almost like a diary in a sense, isn't it? It's like, not so much, I don't want to say a checklist. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I mean, it keeps the score. We know that the body
It's
keeps the
inputting.
score.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's like, it might not even be that it's something you could put your finger on. I mean, I've definitely had this. I assume a lot of women have, like, you're in there, he's doing all the stuff, he's touching all the places,
Yeah.
and kind of going like, why aren't you there? And I'm like, because I'm not a robot, right? I'm not a remote control. There is something more, right? There's something more that's required of you. There's a presence that I can tell you're not here with me. You're here in your body, but you are not connecting with me, or I am not connecting with you. And it's something ineffable that's causing this barrier between us, you know?
And it's funny because in my relationship, very gentle, very wonderful, very respectful, very good in bed. And just that was like all of it should have been good. Like
Good.
everything was there. And should is the word. But what I didn't realize is that all of this stuff that we weren't working with over here was causing this barrier. And
Yeah.
so and then I didn't and I thought it was me for so long. And it wasn't, it was just us. It
Yeah.
was, and we talked about this because we talked about if it's an us thing, meaning, and I
Mm-mm.
mean this from a standpoint of incompatibility of fulfillment. So
Mm.
if you're with someone in general that doesn't have you in this vulnerable state where they're meeting you emotionally or whatever, it's just incompatible.
Mm.
And so you need to go, like, I don't know how you get to compatibility. We unfortunately weren't able to get on the same page, which I think would have allowed a lot of me to feel less vulnerable in areas of my life and open and emotionally in tune. But I think that it's one of those things where I'm, instead of going, oh God, it's me. Well,
Yeah.
it's us. It's maybe we talked about this. Why am I trying to why am I trying to convince myself that I should be enjoying this
Yeah.
and
It's
doing
like
this?
coercion, isn't it? It's like,
It's a
why am
mental
I
thing.
not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why am I not? What's wrong with
Yeah.
me?
And I think it's so interesting that you say that, because in my experience, like, that is how it's been. I've gone, oh well, what's something I've not worked on? You know, what's going
Mhm.
on? But also then you get that mirrored. Oh, why aren't you? Why aren't you performing the way in which you're supposed to in this
Why aren't you
situation?
wet? Why aren't
Yeah.
you, why?
What's
Yeah.
wrong? What's wrong with you?
Mhm.
Like, it's like that, and it's like, but in that, it's actually easier than admitting that it's a joint incompatibility, because that required bilateral work, not the constant work that women do on themselves every blood day
Mhm.
anyway. That we feel is required of us to be better, right?
Mhm. Yeah. And it's interesting because again, it's this thing for me, and I'm not saying, because we talked about this too. You know, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. You know,
Mm.
I and if you aren't my cup of tea and I'm not your cup of tea, then go find your cup of tea, and that's part of me too. But again, if I'm not listening to my body and I'm going, well, it's just me, and it's out here, and I just need to go to therapy or need to do this, but I'm not going, what is all piling up here? And
Mm.
again, I just, why? Like, don't wait till you're 54. Like, don't.
Get one of those balls before. Everyone get one of those balls. When you hear this, you won't have to.
And what's funny is that I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about, because I was telling her what was going on. I was like, oh, yeah, what the fuck? And she was like, yeah, I don't do that. And I was like, really? And I will tell you, I know we're coming up because if we want to make this a short session, but my first AA, not my first, but my AA sponsor, Carol, in Dallas, was the one who was like, and she was older, and I was your age, and she was like, you don't have a toy? I was like, no. She's like, okay, we're going to go get you a toy. I'm like, what? You got gray hair. What? She's like, no, girl. And I know which ones. And we did, and she did. And we got the best thing. I was like, oh, that's awesome. And it was funny because I was like, and again, going back to the difference, we'll go into this real quick, the difference between masturbation and being with a partner, and what happens in that with your biological, in the brain and the things and the purpose, like you talked about before, the function of that. But this friend of mine said, well, I don't want it to be so good and then so I'm addicted to, addicted to it. Like, that's what I want. And I'm like, and I thought for a second, and I thought this, and I was like, that's like saying I never want to eat the best dessert in the world if I can only have it once.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm always going to go, it's not as good as that, or it's not as good. And you know what? I want to. I want it. I mean, why not? I don't necessarily say everybody's got to live up to that. But shit, if you can tell me this is the best I'm ever going to have, awesome. I mean, I don't, what do you think?
Absolutely. I so agree with you. And I think it comes back to this idea of the scarcity of female pleasure. We always feel that, like you said, we've got to hold on to that orgasm, feel it coming, and we've got to control it.
Happen.
It might never come back, right? This might be the last one we ever have, right? It's just that idea of everything being in such short supply that there's not enough joy to go around for women. And it's not true. It's not true at all. But I can understand why one gets that way. And I mean, all of the desserts. And I think it's the fact that you get different things from different sexual experiences, right? There are different kinds of orgasms we can experience. There are different kinds of intimacy, and they're all pleasurable if you stop looking for that one specific, no pun intended, spot, right? It's that kind of thing.
And I wanted you to tell our audience about the difference of function when you're with a partner and biological. And I know we're coming up on time, but I want to talk about that because it's really, I did not know this. This is something that I learned from our conversations and from research that we've talked about and that I've looked at. And I didn't know this, which I think, again, goes back to that thing is if I'm masturbating and I have this, there may be a reason why I can do it here and not with a partner, like rolling orgasms. And that's absolutely. Or at that level or whatever. And you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So, in part, one of the reasons, goes back to the amygdala. So if there's only us, it's much easier, providing we feel safe in our external surrounding, that the amygdala can shut down, that fear and anxiety response can shut down, because usually we feel safe if we're masturbating, in our own company. So it makes the ability to achieve orgasm generally easier in kind of that threat response network. If it's partnered sex, there's much more of the social bonding and emotional processing that goes on, which means that the outcome, like post intercourse, is you usually get much more of things like oxytocin because it is around that social and bonding connection compared to masturbation. The pleasure and reward centers in the brain both are activated during both of them. But there's one particular thing that happens that's different as well, and it's to do with the thalamus. So the thalamus part of the brain is around sensory processing. So that will shut off more if we're in a safe partnered encounter, because we don't need to know what's going on around us because there's two of us. So if something, say, we're kind of thinking evolutionarily, if something is going to threaten us, we're not on our own and we're not vulnerable. And you don't get that shut down during masturbation as often.
And we talked a little bit about the just the biology of what could happen from the sex, meaning
Yes,
the
of
function of
course. The
that.
physical
And
reward.
this is
Yeah.
something we will explore. So this is the first of many, but we're going to explore also the biology of, and I'm trying to remember what it's specifically called, the kind of the keeping yourself alive and making sure that your body is safe, but also when we can get, I'm screwing this up, guys. All right. So we're going to start this over. So what it is like, and help me through this, Ria. It's like we as women, when our body looks at getting pregnant as a risk.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Huge
And
risk.
that part of it, because it takes us more resources. I mean, we need more resources, and we talked about this. So if you could, and that part we don't have when we're masturbating. Like there's no risk of getting pregnant.
It's about risk reward. If we're having partnered sex that may result in a pregnancy, our body's doing loads of calculations that we're not consciously aware of, going, am I going to be provided for? Is someone going to look after me during this pregnancy? Because if we think about it, women died in childbirth so often. And even though we have the pill, protected sex, the body doesn't know the difference when it's experiencing the act of intercourse. It's like, well, like, are you really thinking this through? Like, are you sure you want to? It's like, have you checked their credit score? Like, this is important. Whereas masturbation wise, I mean, you're good to go. There is no risk of pregnancy and what that could bring to us.
So it's not just when you're with, I mean, and I think this is good. I hope, Joe, this is good for guys to realize that it's not just us and them. It's us and everything. And whether we're conscious of it or not, but there's a lot more at stake. Not more at stake, but there's a lot at stake. And it is the body's response to keeping you safe, as far as your body and what could happen to become pregnant. And it is because, again, like you said, it doesn't know that you're on it's okay. No. We're on the pill. We're fine.
Yeah.
And then two, it's the before sex and the relationship and how that is from an emotional standpoint. And then it's the physical of, okay, we can shut down now. All right. Here we go.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, Joe, it's all what do you think of this? I'm curious. Is this because it blew my mind, and I'm me and I'm a woman.
I guess I wasn't surprised. I had never thought of that before. The idea of the inherent risk of pregnancy and what that could feel like, the extra worry and stress. I mean, we're certainly not as complicated hormonally as men as women are. I think we got a little easier in that area, but I think we can empathize. There's situations that feel similar, although I know they're not the same.
Yeah.
Stress, things like that. Or just having a bad day, not feeling in the mood. I mean, guys can all relate to that. I know this stereotypical jokes because stereotypically it's true that men are just a lot easier and ready to go.
Well, and we can talk about that because we talked about that a little bit leading up to this. That's biological too on their part in some ways, where they, like we talked about, as you said, they could shoot everywhere without a lot of worry because their body's not carrying it. Exactly. Their body's not having to worry about what happens after. One, is their body going to be okay, and are they going to survive? And then are they going to care for it after it survives? After it survives, And so I think that's really interesting. But it is, I just don't know. I don't know. I would welcome. I have some ideas, but I don't know that a lot of men understand. And if they do, my God, they're ahead of me, and I'm my body. But I'm catching up. Oh, yeah. So, well, we are going to talk more about this, but I think it goes back to, I can't know what my body's telling me if I'm not listening.
Mm.
And I can't, if I'm just saying, okay, how does it feel? But like, why is it feeling this way? And I'm not learning about the biology and what that tells me. Because like you said, it's collecting data. And what does the data say? And we talk about this a lot in my podcast. I talk about it a lot, and I talk about it with women a lot. And they tell me, it's really hard to acknowledge you're not fulfilled. And I'm not talking about in the bedroom, but outside the bedroom. And if I'm not fulfilled outside the bedroom, it's going to be harder for me to be fulfilled in the bedroom, no matter who's doing what.
Yeah.
And if I have this temple and I am this wonderful being as a woman, then I deserve to feel amazing in the bedroom. And I deserve to have rolling orgasms for 25 minutes, as much
Every
as
day.
I can. Yeah, every day.
Yeah.
I'm walking on sunshine every day. But it just, we laugh, and that, it's not every day for everybody, but we laugh. But what part of this, I tell women, what part of this can you take?
Mm-hmm.
What part of your body can you start listening to? And what is it telling you?
Mm.
What micro slights are telling you, hey, they didn't listen to me? And we talked about this too. It's okay. It's all right.
Yeah.
It's all right. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
I'm being oversensitive. Are you? Your body's not telling you you're being oversensitive. Your body's going,
Mm-hmm.
So, oh, wow. I women, we're going to draw to a close, but I really hope this has been educational. And as always, send us stuff. Send me stuff. Send me, whatever, and educate me. Educate us both. And also tell us about your experiences. But what is one little piece of listening to your body? And again, you're enough. Like, maybe it's not you. Maybe it's your data that you're getting going, hey, don't settle.
Oh, yeah. Write that one down.
Something. Have a conversation. It matters. And I think this is really important. And I just want to tell you, women, and it matters. When something hurts, it matters. When something bothers you, it matters. And what I'm learning is that your body says it matters. Whether or not you say it does, whether or not whoever says it does, whoever that person is in your life. And sometimes it's me saying, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
But my body keeps score.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's make the score good. Let's make it into our advantage. Let's have those conversations. Let's explore it. And get your tribe. Get you a Ria, And call her. She's working on her PhD. She needs lots of data.
I so do.
We're going to get you some. So, ladies, gentlemen, everybody in between, thank you. And Joe, thank you for being part of this. We're going to have more of this. We're going to not just talk about the sex, but actually the body, the way it works with different elements around that. And hopefully we will, I'll put the link on. And we'll get you a ball, Ria.
Get you a ball.
When I come to visit, and at the end of May, we'll get you. We'll bring you one.
You would recognize me.
So, ladies, gentlemen, thank you as always, and until next time, Tubbs, and go have you some Rollins. All right, bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Fear with Christine Spratley, living like a head in charge. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, tell her what topics you want to hear, and share this episode with someone who could use a pantry full of boldness in their life. Remember, life isn't about aging with grace. It's about aging with mischief, audacity, and having a damn good story to tell. So show up, take action, and keep saying fear.